Hi, this is Amy with the Hag Reads. I am back with my weekly wrap-up for the week of July 2nd through July 9th. I read 5 books, 2 adult fiction, 1 young adult, 2 children's fiction. I'm going to just jump right into these. The first book I read was Days by James Lovegrave. And I read this digitally through my library's Overdrive app. And it's kind of, the premise is a superstore culture has kind of taken over the world. So there are these, they called them gigastores, I think. And they called them a number of things, but gigastore was, they're just like, I envisioned it like kind of an upscale, gigantic, as big as a city, Walmart type of situation. And it's an interesting premise, and what's frightening about it for me is I think that there's some, well, more than a little bit of reality in that the potential is out there for something like this, where potentially one corporation could monopolize to such an extent as to basically social status is tied to the type of credit card you have through the Days store. It's cities block, big. In the opening description, they describe it as having its own microclimate because of the way the building is designed. And all the characters are well drawn, I mean, for the most part. But they're all so individual, distinctive, and quirky as to make it kind of unbelievable for this many distinctive, quirky characters to be in one place. Although, as people of Walmart will attest, that kind of environment does tend to attract a little bit of its own weirdness. And it kind of has a multiple storyline. There's a husband and wife set of characters. There's somebody who's on their, internal security team is a character that has his kind of own story arc. There's the story of the founder and his sons who are now in charge of the store, who live on the premises, and they have their own backstory and then an arc within, the existing storyline. And it's kind of a depressing, almost 1984 feel to what the world is like, that it's so dominated by this violently aggressive consumer culture. Excuse me. And it's fascinating, but it's disturbing at the same time. I wouldn't call this a happy book. Like, it was an enjoyable read. It was a frightening read. It was well done, and I found myself reading far longer than I intended to because it was that engaging. So I really enjoyed this. It was a good read. I gave it 4 stars on Goodreads. It was well worth it. My second adult fiction book was Underworld. It's a Resident Evil book series. This is number 4, and I think there are 6 in this series. Now, I read the first 3, I'm almost certain, when I was in Ohio. And then I moved, and I kind of lost track of it. And I think I tried to pick it up before, but my library didn't have any. Since then, they had digitally gotten the 4th book, but the 5th and 6th books in the series are not available in any format at my library, and they continue to average. I have never seen them go on sale, although I don't actually check that often on Amazon. They average $8 for the digital book, and they are only about 250 pages a piece, and I'm loath to pay $8 for a 250-page book. That just seems like an awful lot for a novelization of a video game, however popular the game is. And I am a fan of actually the movie series. I really enjoyed that. I just watched the last one about a week ago, and then I found out through somebody else's channel they're rebooting the franchise, and I was like, what? You just finished this one. But I guess they've released a new game and they're going to reboot the franchise based on that game. And I'll be excited about it. I have never played Resident Evil. I have no stake in it as a game. I don't care how true to the game the movies were. I just enjoyed them on their own, not being vested at all in comparisons with the video game. I just like them for what they are, and I'm sure I will like whatever comes along next. I kind of like zombie things, so it's a little bit up my alley. This book series, as far as I know, is not terribly related to the movie series. This book series seems to focus on the Stars, the police unit that featured in a few of the movies in Peace, a few people, but this really focuses on them and the things they did, and so I'm sure it's true to some aspects of the game, but I'm not aware of what those are, or even if these books are true to those games, but I enjoy them as well on their own, whether or not they relate in any canon fashion towards the original. Since I'm not aware of it and nobody's ever made me aware of it, I don't take offense to whatever it may have, as you know, things of that nature when you're adapting something to a book or a movie from something else or a movie from a book, lots of things get changed in translation. So, but I enjoyed this. I don't know that there's much point in going into a description of it. I'm pretty sure most people are familiar with the Resident Evil franchise in one respect or another, since it's a game, a set of movies, and there are, besides this series, there are several other series from the movies or based on the game that I have never read. But I did enjoy this. I gave it 3 stars. They're light, easy reads. It's a brain candy. There's not, no pun intended, there's not any effort involved in reading them. They're just fun. Third book was my young adult fiction, Sanctuary by Jennifer McKissack. I don't have my glasses on, I'm sorry. Sanctuary is a young adult historical novel, and it's kind of a gothic, atmospheric kind of, what do I want to say here? I think it's meant to be chilling and dark and kind of that, kind of a gray, melancholy sort of book. But it's written for the YA reader, and I found it to be engaging, and I really enjoyed reading it. But I can't imagine if I would have liked reading it at 13 or even 17. Like, it's set, I think I said in my previous video, it's set at some point during World War II, before the Americans have gotten involved in World War II. And so, and it takes place on an island, I think off the coast of Maine, and so it's very isolated. There's just this one family that lives there. The protagonist, Cecilia, has come back from boarding school after her aunt dies. Her mother is in an asylum, and she does not feel welcome back on the island in many senses. And so there's this mystery going on. She's trying to figure out why she doesn't feel welcome, what has happened to her family. And it kind of goes through the history of the island back to the founder, the captain who originally founded the island, and his wife, and some other historical, events that took place around this time. I don't want to go too far into it because I don't want to give away major plot points, but it goes back and forth between the original founding of the island and what took place as the family developed originally, and how the island culture was, and then into the present with Cecilia and her interactions with her uncle and his new wife and everything. She's a strong-willed character, and I think that I just can't imagine a young adult person anywhere from the ages of like 13 to 18 really finding this appealing. It felt more like an adult novel, despite the fact that the main character is only 17. It felt like it was more geared towards adult in that tone and atmosphere. Now, it was very sedate. There's not, much sexuality going on here. There's, the romance aspect of it is very cute. But overall, I gave it 3 stars. I did enjoy it very much. I just can't imagine young adult readers being overly attracted to this, despite it being a good book. The last 2 books were both children's fiction, and one of those was a Hardy Boys, The Mystery of Cabin Island. It was a good little holiday volume of it's just around Christmas time, and the boys and their 2 friends go out to this remote rustic cabin on a separate island, and of course there's a mystery to solve, and there's people skulking around, and there's lots of danger. I enjoyed it, as I always do with these. And the last one was Deadlock, which is a H.I.V.E. novel, which is the, let's see, what is it? I always get it wrong. Higher Institute of Villainous Education, and I really dig this series. It is for middle grade readers, and it is focusing mostly on a group of students, Otto and his little Scooby gang, and they're all in training to become that guy or gal who wants to take over the world. And so they're in an institution that teaches them all the skills they need to be, the bad guy. They're very charming characters. It's well drawn for middle grade readers. The problem I have with this series is that the first book was published in 2006, and that's when I read it when it was a new book. And the next few books came out kind of very in a row there, and then all of a sudden they stopped, and there was a 2 or 3 year gap. And I've read that book, and then there was another 2 or 3 year gap, and there was, and so finally now this book has come out, and it's been out, I think, since last year or the year before, but I wasn't aware of it. But I thought this was going to be the last book, and I was excited that it's going to wrap up, and I get to the end, and it's a giant, massive cliffhanger, just like every other book in this series, and the 10th book was supposed to have been published last month. But now there's a date on it, apparently. It's been pushed up to 2019, so that's another 2-year wait for people who have already been waiting for at least a year, if not 2. I didn't look to see when this was published, so shame on me. But if your audience, your target audience is middle grade readers, and you've been publishing since 2006, you're going to, have readers that move up into that group and can read the series through, but they're going to lose interest before they ever reach the end of it. You're like, I'm very disappointed, and I will maybe read it if it comes out and I find out about it, but I won't go out of my way to seek it out. I just feel like that's a long time to wait for a children's book. 3 years, potentially 4. That's a very long time. And the series itself has been going on now for more than 10 years. And it's not a massively popular series as far as I know, like, say, Harry Potter was. The books are fairly tiny. H.I.V.E, it was only they're less than 300 pages. They fall right in that range, right at 300 pages. And so, but it is a children's book, so the print is bigger, the margins are bigger. So this is like a 150 page book if it were in adult parameters for format. That's a long time for a book that's 150 pages long. And I don't know, perhaps the author has some things going on in his life or whatever is the case, but I guess I've beat this dead horse enough. I think that's an overly long time for an ongoing fiction series this is a low, well, it would be a high 3-star for me. It might even be a 3.5. It's cute and fun and light despite the dire circumstances they always find them in. and that it's always a bad guy trying to kill them, and he's really trying to kill them. Bad things do happen. This is it. There's a lot of violence in these books, but I just find the stories themselves very charming, and so I enjoy them. But I'm very disappointed in the length of time for publication. I wouldn't wait that long in most cases for an adult series. I'm looking at you, George R.R. Martin. So that's all I have now that I have harped on Deadlock and poor Mark Walden for an extremely long time. That's all I've got for right now, and I will be back, I think, on Wednesday for a work in progress video. Bye. Have a great whatever time of day it is. I hope you have a wonderful week. The end.